Hello, and welcome to Budget Commander. On this channel, we'll discuss Magic the Gathering topics with a focus on playing Commander on a budget. We'll cover things like deck building, top cards, deck techs, and more. Let's get started. Hello friends, today we have a Commander shootout, Elsha of the Infinite versus Greven Predator Captain. This is episode 3 of season 1 of Commander Shootout. Greven Predator Captain is a Vultron deck. The goal of his deck is to put himself on the battlefield, sacrifice creatures with large power, small toughness, so that he's getting a lot of card advantage, and then killing his opponent off with combat damage. Much better suited for a 1v1 match. However, Elsha of the Infinite is an Artifacts Matters deck, and gives her a lot of card advantage because she can play cards off the top of her library. Elsha is going to start us out by playing Battlefield Forge, which comes in and can give a colorless or can tap for a red or white at the cost of 1 damage. She's going to then pass the turn to Greven, who plays a mountain, and then at the end of Greven's turn, Elsha is going to use Battlefield Forge to deal 1 damage to herself, but to cast Galvanic Blast, which is going to deal 2 damage to Greven, reducing his life to 38 and hers to 39. She's going to end tap and then play a Plains. And then she's going to pay 2 to cast Golem's Heart, which says whenever a player casts an artifact, she's going to gain a life. Next, she'll pass to Greven, who plays Flamekin Village, and it's going to enter tapped and give him a red, or he can pay a red and tap it to give one of his creatures haste. He'll pass back to Elsha, who will untap and play a mountain of her own. And then it looks like she passes to Greven, who untaps and unfortunately misses a land drop and has to pass back to Elsha, who then casts Tranquil Cove, which enters tapped, gains her life, and can give her a white or blue. She then casts Joyra's... we passed to Greven, who also missed his second land drop. And then she untaps and casts Joyra's Familiar, which gains her a life from the Golem's Heart. And she'll pass back to Greven, who will play an Exotic Orchard. Unfortunately for him, Elsha is not playing black, but he does have 3 red now, access to 3 red. And he'll use that mana to cast the Arc Runner, a 5/1 with haste that at the beginning of his end step will have to sacrifice. He'll go to combat and attack Elsha for 5. She'll decide not to block, reducing her life to 36. At the end of turn, he'll sacrifice the Arc Runner, and then Elsha will untap and cast or bring herself out to the battlefield. Because of Joyra's Familiar, she costs 1 less, and now she has access to the top card of her library. She'll then go to combat and swing the Familiar at Greven, and he has no responses, reducing his life total to 36. He'll then use 3 mana to cast Pristine Talisman, which can tap for a colorless and gains him a life, but it also triggers the Golem's Heart, which gains Elsha a life, bringing her life total to 37. Elsha then untaps and casts Renegade's Map, triggering Elsha's Prowess as well as the Golem's Heart, gaining her a life, and then she'll pay 2 to cast Mind Stone. It's really only 1, because of Joyra's Familiar. Taps to add a colorless, and she can also sacrifice it to draw a card. Also triggers Elsha's Prowess as well as the Golem's Heart, gaining more life. And Mycosynth Wellspring. All 3 of those spells were off the top of the deck, so Elsha's getting really lucky on the card advantage, as well as a big cost reduction from the Familiar. She'll then play the Island from hand, tap it, as well as the Cove to play Penance, which is kind of like a death sentence for Greven, in that she can choose a card from her hand, put it on top of her library to prevent all damage from a black or red source. So as long as Elsha has enough cards in hand and keeps herself on the battlefield, this is not going to hurt Greven at all. Prowess trigger again, And then Elsha and Joyra's familiar will attack Greven, reducing his life total to 27 and bringing his commander damage count to 7. At the end of her turn, she'll cycle Secluded Step for a 1 damage from the Battlefield Forge, and pass the turn. Greven will untap and play Ash Barrens, and then for 4 cast Bloodsworn Steward, a 4/4 flyer that gives Greven +2/+2 and haste. Then Greven will pass back to Elsha, who untaps and then activates the Mind Stone, paying 1 to sacrifice it and draw a card. She'll then play a Plains and then cast Alloy Mirror, triggering the Golem's Heart, gaining more life, and then cast Saheeli Sublime Artificer, which gives her a servo on all non-creature spells that she casts, and can also copy one of her artifacts. Also triggers Elsha for a prowess. Don't know if I said that already. Then she'll go to combat and swing at Greven, reducing his life to 23 and bringing his commander count up to 11. At the end of turn, or during the second main phase, Elsha will activate the Renegade map, sacrificing it to put a land into hand and shuffling her deck. Then pass. Greven will untap and cast Impetuous Devils for 4, a 6/1 with haste that forces Elsha to block if able with at least one of her creatures. Additionally, the devil has to get sacrificed at the end of turn, so probably going to trade creatures here. Goes to combat and swings with both the vampire and the devils. Elsha decides to block the devil with the Alloy Mirror, which takes 2 of the damage, and then 4 of it will trample in, reducing Greven's life total to 35. Both the Alloy Mirror and the devils go to the graveyard, and then Bloodsword Steward gets in, reducing Elsha's life total to 31. Passing the turn to Elsha, she untaps and casts Mind's Desire, which ends up triggering herself, and then she'll play an island from hand, and using Mind's Desire, put a Memnite out. Seems like a bad trade, but she does get to gain 1 life off of the Golem's Heart. I think she was really hoping to bury Greven with a big spell there, but just didn't happen. Going to combat, she'll attack the familiar as well as with herself, reducing Greven's life to 17 and bringing his commander damage count up to 15. Passing back to Greven, he'll untap and play a Swamp and cast himself or bring himself onto the battlefield. He has +2/+2 in haste because of the vampire, and he'll go straight to combat and attack with both of his creatures. Elsha will activate the Penance, putting 2 cards from her hand back on top of her library and preventing damage from both creatures. No damage is dealt, and Greven will pass back to Elsha, who untaps, puts out Temple of Triumph, allowing her to scry 1, and then swings with Joyra's Familiar, herself, as well as Memnite. Greven has no responses, reducing his life total to 12 and bringing his commander count up to 18. Second main phase, she'll cycle Forgotten Cave, drawing a card and passing the turn. Greven will cast Cabal Ritual, gaining him 1 mana, which allows him to cast an Earth, and that'll bring back the Arc Runner. And Greven will go to combat and attack with all 3 creatures, deciding not to activate his on attack trigger. Then he'll cast Tamir Battle Rage, giving his Arc Runner double strike. And in response, Elsha will activate the Penance, putting 3 cards from the top of her library from her hand on top of her library, and preventing damage from all 3 of Greven's cards or creatures. And then Greven will have to sacrifice the Arc Runner at the end of turn. And Elsha will go to untap and immediately attacks with Joyra's Familiar, Elsha herself, as well as the Memnite. Greven has no responses, reducing his life total to 7, but more importantly, bringing his commander damage count up to 21. So Greven gets knocked out of the game. Elsha will get to move on to round 2. Highlights. Greven, we didn't really get to see him go off. Both actually this game and our last game, I noticed that the player that lost got mana screwed, missed a land drop. In this case, Greven missed 2 land drops early, which just put him behind. That's not something he can recover from. So make sure you keep the right hand and mulligan if you need to. Bloodsword Steward, however, did really well. Gave the commander +2/+2 and haste, which was cool. And Unearth was pretty cool in that we got to see Arc Runner come back twice. Did get double strike, just penance was too much for Greven to get around. Familiar was a highlight for Elsha in that it reduced, I believe, 7 mana for her. So paid for itself almost twice. And then penance just locked Greven almost out of the game. Elsha also dug real deep with her play the top card of your library ability, so that was cool. Standings after match 3 of round 1, we see that Elsha gets to move on and Greven is done. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Peace! Thanks for watching. You can help support this channel by hitting that subscribe button. This will help keep you up to date on content from Budget Commander. If you liked the video, make sure you like the video. Leave me a comment with your thoughts on this topic. And if you think someone else could benefit from this video, feel free to share. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk with you next time.